I'm a 23-year-old guy. I live in a pretty safe neighborhood, and I usually always lock my doors. Last night, I forgot. It was not too long after I'd taken my dogs out for the last time, and I was turning off the TV and lights when one of my dogs started growling. Not too weird, since he sometimes does that when people walk by the house. He normally only does it for certain people, not everyone. I then heard the front door open, and somebody walk in my house. My dog then started barking. My other dog, who loves all people, came running from the other room to greet our guest. At the same time, I was reacting like, what the fuck? Who are you? Standing in the hall was a guy in his mid to late 20s. He was skinny and very tall. He said, oh wait, I don't think I'm in the right place. He genuinely seemed confused. I replied with, no you aren't. Please get out now. He apologized and said he was coming to hang out with a friend and accidentally went into the wrong house. I asked him what house he was looking for, and he said a number that was just a couple over from mine. He apologized again and left. He seemed nice and non-threatening, but I was kind of spooked. This morning, I was ready to laugh the whole thing off. I was planning on telling my neighbor, a couple that's in their mid-30s, what had happened last night. I don't know them all too well, but we have talked before. Luckily, I caught up with one of them whenever I was walking my dogs. I didn't want to come off like I was mad or scared over the situation, so I just said, I'm sure he told you about it, but your friend paid me a surprise visit last night. My neighbor gave me this confused look and said, what are you talking about? I said, your friend. He walked into my house last night thinking it was your place. My neighbor was quiet for a second and then said, I don't want to alarm you, but I have no idea what you're talking about. We didn't have a friend over last night. Back in 2011, I lived in a small flat downtown. My girlfriend at the time was working as a waitress, normally till around 2 a.m. Though she didn't live with me, she used to come over after her shift to spend the night and stay the day after. It was such a habit to hear her keys in the door late at night that sometimes it nearly didn't get me out of my slumber. Eventually, she lost her key to my apartment. For a week, we had a code. She would text me when she was about 10 minutes away from my apartment, and I would leave the door open. We did this twice without any problems, until that night. She sent me the usual, I'm coming text, and I unlocked the door. It seems I fell asleep right afterwards. When I woke up, I sensed she was lying next to me in bed, and I went to the bathroom, and that's when I received the text saying, the bus stopped midway, I'll be there ASAP. It was now clear that someone was in my bedroom, and it wasn't my girlfriend. I tried to slowly open the door to have a look, but at that very moment the entrance door slammed shut violently. I ran to the staircase to see who it was and hack it to the first floor, but nothing was in sight. To this day, I still don't know who was inside my bedroom on that night. I don't live in the best of areas, so it could have literally been anyone. I moved out 6 months later, though. So this encounter happened 2 weeks ago. My boyfriend and I were on a date in the upscale area of our big city. Being the romantic that he is, after our lunch date, he wanted to take me to a florist to get me a bouquet of flowers. The address he entered on his phone took us to an obviously wealthy, gated community that we had never been to before. There was no neighborhood name sign, which I didn't think much about because it was a rural, suburban area. Many of the houses there were incredibly similar, also known as McMansions. And I noticed about 12 people outside wearing blue and white clothing. They were performing various activities like walking dogs, chatting with each other, mowing the lawn. But as soon as they noticed us, they all froze and began to stare at us. The expressions ranged from horror to straight up anger. I began to become visibly unsettled, but my boyfriend decided to drive through the gates anyway. As we began to drive down the street, I began to notice more and more people wearing blue and white clothing, curiously peering out of their windows or from sidewalks. An aching feeling began to settle in my stomach, but I tried to dismiss my feelings as paranoia. The streets of the neighborhood began to become more and more winding until we eventually ended up in front of a brick house with black shutters, black rooftop, and door. There was ivory covering the home, yet it was well tended to. There was no car outside or even a visible garage, and it was also dead silent in this part of the neighborhood. My boyfriend and I gave each other a look, and I asked to see where he found this ad on Google. At this address, all it said was, "The Florist," in all caps, with no photographs, telephone number, website, or even business hours. We both discussed how weird it was, until we heard what sounded like a back door slam shut and heavy breathing and footsteps making its way around the house to our car. My boyfriend peeled out of their driveway and went in the opposite direction of where we came from. The energy in the car went from mild uncertainty to full-blown panic. We ended up back at the gate, and there was even more people standing outside their homes, staring motionlessly. It was so quiet that all you could hear were the birds chirping and my panicked breathing. After what felt like an eternity, the gates finally opened and my boyfriend sped away. We promised to never go back there again. I checked the same address today, and now it has a different name, still in all caps, with no listed information. A little context is needed here. My dad and I live together in our own multi-family home in Germany. My dad has a serious lung condition. His lungs produce and trap an excessive amount of mucus. The trapped amount is huge and keeps his lungs from working correctly. It's pretty normal that he has to be picked up by an ambulance every 2 to 3 weeks because he can't breathe anymore. Last week, it was that time of the month. He was having trouble breathing, so I called him an ambulance, and they brought him to the closest hospital. Pretty normal for me because this happened at least 10 times in the last 6 months. So I went to bed after he got picked up on Tuesday. I went to work the next morning and got a text from him that he had to stay at least 2 more days, approximately until Friday. Wednesday evening, I got home from work and played a match of Rogue Company when someone suddenly rang my doorbell. That's unusual because we never have unannounced visitors. I walked to the door and I was about to press the door buzzer to open the main door when I heard, I believe, more than one voice directly in front of my door. So that means that someone got past the main door? Weird. I asked in German, "Hello, who is it?" Silence for 3 seconds. Then a person who sounds like my father, but at the same time doesn't sound like my father, answers, "Micah, it's me. I forgot my keys. Open the door." I thought, okay, in that case, wait a minute. My dad never calls me Micah, only Mickey. And there was that sarcastic tone in their voice. I didn't trust the situation. I called my father on his phone. If the person in front of my door was my father, his phone should ring, right? Right. Well, it didn't ring. My father answered, and I suspected he was still in the hospital. Meanwhile, the 2 people on the other side of the door heard my phone call and started kicking my door. "Let me in, Micah. It's your daddy. Let me in." Thank God that door is reinforced. After I threatened them with calling the police and having a big-ass knife in my hand, they left. I heard their footsteps running down the staircase. So I rushed to a window facing the street to check if I could see any license plates or any description of a car. I could see nothing. Just a few footsteps in the distance is all I heard. They never came back, but what's weird is that they knew my name and that my father wasn't home, despite his car being in the driveway. Shit was really hitting the fan when a buddy reported something similar close by. We called the police, and the investigation is in progress.